committee sent out a proposal. 66 artists submitted applications. 7 were selected to produce a model, and it was on the basis of a model, I think it was a 28-inch model that she was selected by the committee to produce the sculpture. Marisol was born in 1930 to a very well-to-do family and spent a lot of her life traveling extensively around the world. Most of her art education was through short-term classes that she took in different schools. She's a highly educated, very intelligent person who's deeply knowledgeable about the world that she was living in. She didn't have one style. She worked over the course of her career in a variety of media, and her work evolved over time. For example, she started in the 1960s making cast bronze pieces, which is not really what she's primarily known for. She's best known for the work that she did in wood, usually portraits. She's a figurative artist.
Jean Charlot was one of the finalists. And when the statue by the model by Marisol Escobar was submitted and selected, he praised it. He said, "It clings to the sober beauty of basic geometric form." Charlot's endorsement carried a lot of weight because he was a world-renowned muralist, and he was a University of Hawaii art professor.
2 members of the initial committee felt that the sculpture was not appropriate for Statuary Hall, and they instituted a protest. I believe it was the House of Representatives backed them up, and the initial decision was made to take the commission away from her and give it to another artist. And the reason for this was that, for some people, her sculpture was seen as too modern. They didn't think that it was respectful, and the sculptor that they chose produced something that was much more representational. It was from a much earlier point in Father Damien's life. The rest of the committee members actually decided to fight the reversal. They really liked Marisol's version. In fact, one of the people on the committee said, "I think the statue we chose is very fine in its simplicity. It's very strong, and I feel strongly that because we became a state in the 1960s and the statue was commissioned in the 1960s, it should be done in the style of the 1960s, not the 1820s.
The controversy over this, if you consider the fact that he was this beloved Catholic priest who came to administer to a fearful disease like leprosy, and everybody's identifying with him, but the part they want to identify with is with him as a young man. Well, we didn't do a statue for him because he was a young man. We did it because of his sacrifice. And so Marisol creates this wonderful statue where he is in a box form. His face is scarred with leprosy. He's standing there holding a cane and his arm in a sling. The reason I saw it as something so powerful and communicated what he was is because it was almost as though his sacrifice and his love for these people was so large that you couldn't contain it in a small body. It had to be this big body, to suggest the power of that commitment he made.
The committee sent out a series of photographs of Father Damien from different points in his life, including up to the very end of his life when he himself had contracted leprosy. And she wrote, I think, really movingly about why it was that she specifically chose to work from the photograph of him at the end of his life. And she said, "I was sent several photographs of Father Damien. I chose the one that shows him as a mature man. To me, it's a beautiful image of Father Damien, one that I'm deeply moved by. It has the strong character and individuality of self-realization. I felt as if this was a man who'd found himself in Hawaii and had become a Hawaiian. I cannot see Father Damien as a young European priest before he's accomplished what he wanted to, and without the marks of his accomplishments.
The unveiling took place in the rotunda. The statue was only to have been there temporarily. But when I was assigned the responsibility to create something that would be part of the Father Damien statue, that would be a tribute to the patients, what I did was I looked at the area that the statue was in. So now that I'm being commissioned to do this job, I'm looking at it as a permanent placement. Then I looked at the floor pattern that was etched into the floor, and I said, okay, I'll make it that big because it'll conform to the pattern on the floor, and it'll be big enough where I can put his statue on it and put the inscription. So that's how I arrived at that shape. By the way, when I came up with that suggestion, this is when Alfred Price said to me, you have to go and check with the engineers to make certain that the weight can be supported, because now I'm going to add a granite step to the statue. And they said, not only will it not support it, it can't even support the statue. So I reported back to Alfred Price. And one day he calls me and he said, you come and meet me at the Beretania entrance of the Capitol. And when I got there, he was standing right in this spot, and he says, he's going right here. And I said, why there? And he said, because there's a column under me. Well, there's that column, you know, in the parking garage, and that's what provides that support. Now, because I had fashioned that step to go on the floor of the Capitol, it was perfectly level. When you put it on the Beretania Plaza, there's a slope in it for water runoff. So we had to put lead balls underneath the granite base so that it would stay level. And so then I get a follow-up call from Alfred Price. He said, I don't like driving up Beretania and looking at that step resting on those lead balls. You're going to have to come up with another, with another addition on this. And he said, and my suggestion, now Alfred Price was an architect, he said, my suggestion is that you pour a step in place. And we poured it in place so that it would conform to the contour and slope of the plaza and also be level enough so that we could take, now we've got two steps, right? So that step and the next one and the statue itself. Scale really matters. And the reason Father Damien now looks absolutely perfect in this setting is actually because of those two steps. Because the broader, the more open the space is, the more you sort of have to fill it. And there's a relationship between that artwork and that statue and the steps to the Capitol itself. So when it was just by itself in that single step, the proportion in its relationship to the Capitol was not appropriate. After Alfred Price and I decided on putting the step for Father Damien's statue, he said, you need to go with Dr. Worth to Kalaupapa because you need to meet with them. Dr. Worth, Robert Worth, was with the health department, and he made regular visits to Kalaupapa to consult with the patient's counsel there. Ku'ulei, who was assigned to take me on the tour, was also a member of that council, but that day she was excused because she was going to take me on the tour to familiarize me with the history and the experience that they all shared at Kalaupapa. You know, she was hinting that I was going to be writing this. And I said to her, Kule, are you thinking I'm going to be writing this tribute? And she said, yes. And I said, Kule, I'm a designer. Let me go back to Honolulu and find you someone to write this for you. And she said, no. God sent you to us. You are to do this for us. And, you know, there was something in what she said and the way she said it. There was no way I felt I could tell her no. She said, you know, Mommy, the reason you have to do it, most of the people who died here were Hawaiians. And I think she felt that because I was Hawaiian, I could capture what it was like for them to go through this. I wrote Fear Banished the Suffering in memory of the more than 7,200 victims of Hansen's disease and their helpers who died in remote Kalawao, land of the exiled. Their courage and compassion spared others from their own tragic fate. So this was what I wrote, and this was translated into Hawaiian because I remembered what she said. I felt that it needed to be also said in Hawaiian.
I think she was really happy with the end result of the sculpture, that it represented for her who he was, what the work was that he accomplished, in a respectful way that acknowledged what it was that he had, you know, what his life work was. While at the same time it also was representative of her own work. The way that his body is that very simplified form, and really the parts of the sculpture that receive the greatest attention is his face and the one hand holding the cane. It really meant a lot to her to do that commission, that she cared deeply about Father Damien, the kind of person he was, and that being able to complete that commission was something that was very meaningful for her.
He became a statesman. He became the state's messenger because the front of the Capitol became his podium. So everything associated with him carried on the power of the message from the Capitol. It matters where you place the statue, and it matters what is behind the statue. There has to be a compatible relationship between the two. And they're appropriate because they're of the same time period. So the architecture of the Capitol, the design of the statue are compatible. At the time he was put there, he had not yet been canonized. He is now a saint. So when you consider, you know, I look at the two statues that we now have representing Hawaii in the Statue Hall at Washington, D.C. Kamehameha's statue takes us back to the first culture, the Hawaiian culture, and the importance of what he did in unifying the islands. And then you look at, now he unified it through war, I have to say, okay, through battles. And now, at the other extreme, you have a peace-loving man whose gift was one of sacrifice for humankind. I think that is a wonderful way to bracket Hawaii.